Hey everyone! At the beginning of every month, I do a review of the previous month and a plan for the next month. And in this video, I want to tell you a little bit about both of those, how I do it, what ideas you can incorporate in your practice if you plan your month, and how it's been working for me. So I have different elements that I use to journal with, depending on what I feel is relevant in the month. And we're going to go through these elements one by one so that you can pick and choose which ones you would like to use in your own monthly plan and your own monthly reflections as well. I like planning my month on multiple levels. This isn't just about goal setting. It's not just about physical stuff. It's not just about spiritual stuff. It's not just about mental stuff. It's everything combined. And depending on where I feel my attention should lie in that month or where my attention was the month before, I will change which elements I use in order to plan. So I'm just going to give you all of the elements at my disposal, or at least some of them, maybe not all of them, and then you can see which ones are relevant to you and which ones you want to use. So it's going to be journaling prompts, journaling methods, ideas to write about, ideas how to structure your goals, all of that good stuff. And as a bonus, I will also at the end talk about how I reflect on the previous month. This is also relevant to my shadow work. It's relevant for my personal improvement work, how I do my witchcraft, how I engage with my spirituality, how I plan my career. It's everything combined. So I've said that often enough now. Let's go, let's start. The first element that I use if I'm planning my month, or the first potential element that I use when I'm planning my month, is paradigm shifts or shifts of belief. So how I use this is when I feel like I have a belief that is limiting me, such as my friends aren't engaged enough in conversation with me, or I can't be an interesting person with my friends. These are just weird examples that just came to my mind. Then I would take that and shift it into something else. Now, I've done this quite a lot last year when I was very deep in shadow work. Nowadays, I'm not using this so often because I feel like I don't have so many paradigms or beliefs that I want to shift about myself. But I think it's still super, super helpful. I'm also going to put some examples up here because I can't think of good examples right now, so that you know what I mean by this. You can use this in order to work on a paradigm shift or work on a shift in your belief throughout the whole month. Because sometimes we expect ourselves to just, shift our beliefs, shed our limiting beliefs, but it doesn't go that fast most of the time. Most of the time it takes you a little bit of work and a little bit of awareness in everyday life in order to change these things. And that's exactly what this is about. It's about being present and being aware of it and seeing how it manifested throughout your month. Now, the second method I want to talk about is the stop, continue, and start structure. I'm sure a lot of you have heard of this, but this is super helpful if I feel like I'm stuck in a rut or I feel like I'm not delivering on the goals that I had for the previous month. I will start building habits more consciously. So I will write down which habits I want to stop, which ones I want to continue because they are positive for me, and which ones I want to start and establish. Don't overdo it. Don't make like a huge list and expect yourself to fulfill that, but it still helps. It helps. It's a little bit of a reflection thing you can do about how much you've achieved in the previous month, and it's just a nice thing to do. Just make sure that you keep looking at it, you keep engaging with these things that you write down at the beginning of the month, and don't just forget them. A variation of this that a friend of mine uses is the 4 L's: liked, learned, lacked, and longed for. So you have those 4 categories, but this is more of a retrospective, more of a reflection category, whereas the stop, continue, start is more pointed towards the future. So the liked, learned, lacked, longed for is probably more on the reflective side of things when you think about how the past month has been for you. Divination. We can't live without divination. There are many ways in which I draw cards. One of them is that I draw one for each area of my life that is relevant right now and that I want to be present with or know about in the month. This can be anything from love to career to friendships, family, spirituality, anything like that really, where you feel like you want to get a little bit of a inspiration on what might happen in the month or what areas you could focus on in the month so that you have a bit of an idea what happens. Sometimes these cards actually turn out to be the least important throughout the month, and I only really refer back to them at the end when I reflect and I realize, it did kind of manifest like that. You know what I mean? So that's one of the ways I use tarot. Sometimes I also draw a single card for the whole month as a theme. That also works quite well. It's really up to you how you want to do it, how many cards you want to draw. You could also do a very simple spread like what awaits me, what am I going to learn, what should I avoid, things like that. You can play around with it, see what works. I'm not a fan of doing the same exact thing every month, so I'm usually very open to playing around. If you have any ideas for this, let me know. If you have any tarot spreads you do at the beginning of each month, or if you have any prompts you do, let me know. Another thing I sometimes like to do is writing down the predictions that some tarot readers or some astrologers have on YouTube. Not because I think it's the golden truth and I stick to it, but because I think it's interesting to engage with what other people think the energy of the month is like. So for example, my favorite astrologer, Sarah Verba, she does videos monthly for each zodiac sign. Sometimes I listen to those and write down what she's saying, what the themes are, and then I see how it plays out in the month. As I said, I don't take it as like, okay, this is the one truth, this is it, but rather I take it as inspiration for me to engage with, or at least to reflect on at the end of the month and see how it applied in my life. And it also makes you tune into the astrological events, which is great. You can also write down the moons for the month so that you know when the full moon is happening, when the new moon is happening, so you can engage with that. Now, an obvious one, straight up goals. What goals do you have? Sometimes this overlaps a little bit with the whole stop, continue, start thing. But I usually do like to write down certain goals that I have, whether it's numbers or it's a certain level I want to have achieved in a language or anything like that. I can't think of goals right now. This shows how directionless my life is. No, I'm just kidding. But yes, writing down straight up goals can be helpful and can be fun as well. And now my favorite, actually this is my favorite thing to do is, there is a deck called the Fine Lines Oracle, I believe. I do not own it, but I love the concept of it because it has similar words juxtaposed, essentially, where you have something like receiving versus taking, or acceptance versus settling. Or last month I had judgment versus discernment. So these just kind of make you think in so many cool ways and figure out some hangups that you may have. And usually whenever I draw a word combination like that, I kind of made my own little deck of like little paper slips that have these words on it. Whenever I draw it, it's actually scarily accurate and I already know what it refers to. And I take it into consideration and I write a little bit about the words, about my thoughts about them. It's really good. So you don't necessarily have to have this X versus Y word play going on. You could also do a random word generator. Do it once, do it twice, do it 3 times, however often you want to, so that you have some word of the month. That is really helpful for me. I'm not a big word of the year person because I would just forget it all the time. But with a month, I can handle that, especially when I get to the reflection part. So as a disclaimer, I want to say I don't always stick with these things. Just because I write all of this down, and I write it down, by the way, on one page, Everything I do usually fits on 1 page or 1.5 pages, so I don't do all of these elements every month. And sometimes it slips my mind, like which cards I drew, which words I used, what my goals are. I try to look at it every day or every other day to re-engage with it, but sometimes, things happen, we get sidetracked, and it's fine. So as a disclaimer, I want to say I'm not someone who sticks to this one-on-one golden truth way of looking at this. That sentence made no sense. Anyways, let's go on. So yeah, I don't always engage with it as much as I should. So even though I try to keep it present. But that leads me to how I reflect on my month, because this is actually a practice that helps me a lot as well. Now, how I used to do it, how I used to reflect on the past month, is that I used to write down for each category, for each of these elements, how it applied, what had happened, and reflect on them very specifically. Like, oh, I drew this card and that's how it manifested. I had this word as a subject and that's how it manifested. Or I wrote down this goal and this is how I handled it. I moved away from that way of doing things because it felt a little bit too formulaic and a little bit too rigid. Nowadays, I tend to just write down what happened, how I feel about it, and kind of the big happenings of the month and how they relate to the elements that I used when I planned the month. Sometimes I write that down. So for example, I would write down, oh, I had a fight with a family member and this brought me onto a certain shadow or a certain issue that I have to work on, or I got rejected for a job and that brought up these feelings within me. So I kind of know what the main points of the month were if I want to look back on it. And sometimes I relate it back to the elements, sometimes I don't. And I don't write down for every single goal, didn't achieve this, did achieve this, didn't do this, did do this. Not for every single one. This is where I usually rather look at when I plan the next month after that, if I want to keep that goal or not. I don't see the point in writing down so specifically, like I didn't achieve this, I didn't achieve this, I didn't achieve this, but rather I just make in my mind the decision, do I want to take the achievement or do I want to take the task with me? Do I want to take that wish or goal with me, or do I leave it behind? And that's fine then. So if I want to reach something, I will put it into the next month and make sure that I don't procrastinate on it and make sure that I stick with it rather than forgetting about it. That's how I reflect on my month. Pretty simple, actually. So usually what this looks like is at the beginning of each month, I will have 1 page that is the previous month, where I just write down in little points what happened and how it tied into my thoughts, my feelings. And then I will have another page or page and a half planning the next month and writing down my goals, writing down whatever elements I choose, the cards I draw, the words. I used to actually, my gosh, this just came to my mind. I used to write down like YouTube numbers and Instagram numbers and number goals as well. I've moved away from that because numbers are so meaningless and I just want to create cool content, but it just came to my mind. So you can also incorporate numbers like that if you really want to, but for me, it turned out that it didn't really work. It didn't really motivate me or anything like that. It was just sort of a task that I did where I wrote down these numbers and my number goals. So that's that. I also have videos about finding inspiration as a witch and some easy witchcraft practices, so I will link those videos below if you want to keep watching. Please like this video if you liked it. It helps me, and if you want to dwell in my domain a little longer, that would make me happy as well. Feel free to subscribe, stick around, watch some more videos. Click the links below to Patreon, journaling prompts, Instagram, all the good things. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope that you have the greatest of days, the greatest of weeks, and let me know in the comments what your favorite planning methods are for the month. Thank you.